As a semiconductor professional or aspirant, you are quite aware of chip shortage that happened globally during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown. Global semiconductor fabs has geared up to handle the shortage, although there is a catch. Want to know in detail? Stay tuned till the end of the video. TSMC has notified clients of a 5 to 9% price hike for both its advanced and mature process node, making products from advanced processors, connectivity chips, and sensors to microcontrollers and power management ICs. These new prices are set to go into effect in January 2023. Some TSMC clients said they were informed of the upcoming price increase on May 10th. An executive familiar with the matter said given the slowing demand for products like smartphones and PCs, it might be difficult for clients to fully accept TSMC's planned price hike. For the advanced chip, it might work, but for matured nodes, it could be quite challenging for customers to accept, the person said. Rising production costs are putting pressure on chip makers at a time when demand for smartphones and personal computers has slowed on market uncertainties sparked by inflation, the Ukraine situation, and COVID-related lockdowns in China. The price hike also reflects the hefty cost of TSMC's own expansion push. It's spending $100 billion through 2023 to increase capacity, with $40 billion to $44 billion earmarked for this year alone. TSMC's notification comes less than a year after its biggest price hike in a decade. Last August, it told its clients it would increase prices up to 20% amid the unprecedented global chip shortage and its historic expansion plans. Smaller rivals such as United Microelectronics and Semiconductor Manufacturing International Company raised prices several times last year and in some cases actually charged more than TSMC. Still, such a rare move by TSMC rattled the chip industry. TSMC's move comes at a chip-making equipment industry grapples with severe shortages of everything from components to parts to materials. These shortages are prolonging the delivery times of machines. ASML, Europe's biggest chip production tool maker, told investors that it faces inflation concern, cost increases in labor, materials, and energy, as well as additional fees for securing parts, all of which will hurt its gross margin by 1%. The latest price increase follows one carried out last August, where advanced process chip prices increased by 7 to 9% and cost for mature node chips were hiked by 20%. TSMC levied a slight price increase in 2021. TSMC is a major chip supplier for Apple, AMD, Intel, and Nvidia. It's easy to conclude based on this pricing trend that we are past the peak of the semiconductor supply or demand imbalance, and industry analysts seem to agree, suggesting the chip shortage may ease up by the end of 2022. According to sources, TSMC has a more bullish outlook, estimating an increase of annual revenue of 30% and is forecasting a long-term compound annual growth rate CAGR of between 15 and 20%. This might not be too far off considering TSMC reported record high revenue increases in the first quarter of 2022, up 30.5% year-over-year. Casual consumers are probably aware of how the pandemic has affected the semiconductor industry thanks to increased demand for consumer and work from home devices, but now these market segments are slowing down. The twin effects of Ukraine situation and the fuel pricing crunch have also dented consumer confidence and spending on non-essential electronics. The early notice is to give customers some buffer to prepare for the price adjustment, while TSMC's move to raise prices is to address increasing costs and capital needs for historic expansion. Sources said. In another surprise, TSMC said last year it would halt its practice of lowering prices each quarter for its chip design clients after their products go into mass production and the process is running smoothly. TSMC chairman Mark Liu in March said all semiconductor players have been directly impacted by the rising prices of components and materials, which are driving up production cost. But TSMC's clients have substantial markets beyond the consumer sphere. Strong demand and need for long-term structural upgrades in high-performance computing sector and 5G will drive growth. There is also increasing demand for semiconductors in the automobile industry, especially as more people switch to electric vehicles. TSMC's alleged 5% to 9% price hike will begin in January 2023. International political situations like sanctions imposed by US on China-based semiconductor firms such as SMIC and Huawei Semiconductor might give extra mileage to TSMC. Even rumors of sanctions could lead to companies moving to out-of-China manufacturers such as TSMC to avoid a potential supply chain disruption. Recently, another news came that Samsung could increase prices by 15 to 20% depending on the process node. The older the chip technology, the higher the price rise. The price bump is expected to be enacted in the second half of this year, once it has finished negotiating with its clients. TSMC and UMC plan smaller single-digit price increases. However, while Samsung kept prices steady last year, both Taiwanese firms increased cost last year. At the beginning of the pandemic, demand for home computing equipment soared. Now, with many consumers running usable equipments and growing economic uncertainty, there are signs that demand for smartphones and PCs is waning. TSMC's chairman warned in late March. Last week, China's largest chip maker, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, that is SMIC, said that demand for such products dropped like a rock. However, the company is more acutely impacted by the Ukraine situation, as it has customers in Russia and Ukraine and more vulnerable to Chinese lockdowns that have closed shops. Globally, despite consumer demand slowing, chip makers expect to be supply constrained. Cloud server chip and 5G networking gear demand are expected to continue to grow, even in a slowing economy. Even other players like United Microelectronics Corporation, that is UMC, have been warning clients that they plan to raise prices by a mid to high single-digit % on the heels of a price hike several months ago. UMC's another round of price hike will be a 4% increase in the second quarter. In the case of Samsung, since the South Korean chip company makes chips for a wide array of customers including IBM, Nvidia and Qualcomm, among several others, the increase in pricing would inevitably impact them. At this point, Samsung is already fielding orders for the next 5 years that together represent around 8 times that of the previous year's revenue, according to Samsung's foundry business executive VP Kang Moon-joo during a recent earnings call. We expect our order book to continue to grow. Just last year, the company dethroned Intel Corporation to become the world's biggest chip maker by revenue and has declared it wants to overtake TSMC and become the biggest player in the $400 billion foundry business of making chips. Since all the leading chip makers are hiking prices across all technology nodes, be it advanced or matured ones, there will be a cascading effect on consumer electronics market, ranging from smartphones to smart appliances. While we are struggling with the worldwide inflation, price hike and all other concerns, another concern is added to the list. Since there is no escape, let's get prepared for the situation. That's all for today. We will meet with another episode of SNA. Till then, stay tuned, stay focused.